All right, welcome back to Earnings Digest. We're always here to break down the latest in the economy and what's happening in the stock market.
Yeah, that's right.
So today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into a topic that could, quite frankly, completely change how the whole world economy operates.
It really could.
We're
Yeah.
talking about the potential end to the reign of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency.
Big stuff.
If,
Huge ramifications if it were to happen.
yeah, so how about we start off with a little context for our listeners?
Sure thing.
You see, there's this block of countries called the BRICS,
Mm-hmm.
which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Right, and we've actually covered the BRICS in detail in a previous deep dive, so if you haven't already, go check that one out first.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It'll give you all the background you need.
Yeah, for the full picture.
Yeah. But the key takeaway here is that they're a major force on the global stage. Like, we're talking about almost half of the world's population and a gigantic portion of the global economy.
Oh yeah, they're not messing around.
No, they're not. Now, for years, these nations have been kind of grumbling about the dominance of the US dollar, but recently they've been getting a lot more vocal and a lot more serious, actually, about creating their own currency to rival the dollar.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. For those who maybe aren't super familiar with, like, international finance stuff, can you explain why a country would even want to create its own global currency? Like, what's the benefit?
Okay, so imagine this. Most international trade right now happens in US dollars.
Right.
This means if, say, Brazil wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they have to first exchange their Brazilian currency for US dollars,
Right.
then use those dollars to buy the oil.
Oh, I see.
So that gives the U.S. a ton of power, right?
Mhm.
Every time a transaction like that takes place, it basically strengthens the U.S. dollar. And it also means that all these other countries are kind of at the mercy of U.S. economic policies.
Right.
So that's the first benefit. The BRICS nations would have more financial independence, right? Their economies wouldn't be so closely tied to the ups and downs of the U.S. dollar.
So if the U.S. economy takes a hit, the BRICS wouldn't necessarily get pulled down with it.
Exactly.
Interesting. But I'm also hearing them talk a lot about, like, stability and security. What exactly do they mean by that?
Well, think about it like this. When the U.S. economy has a problem, the whole world feels it. Remember back in 2008 with the financial crisis?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that rippled out across the globe.
Right.
So the BRICS are basically saying, hey, we want to create a system that's less prone to these kinds of shocks, something that's a bit more stable and predictable.
I see what they mean.
They've even floated some ideas like pegging the new currency to a basket of commodities like gold or oil, or even using blockchain technology to make it more transparent and secure.
So they're not just trying to, like, replicate the dollar. They're really trying to think outside the box here.
Exactly. They're looking for ways to create a system that addresses some of the weaknesses they see in the current dollar-dominated system.
Now, I do remember a few years back when Trump was still in office, this whole BRICS currency thing came up. And he did not mince words.
No, he did not.
He basically threatened them with, like, massive tariffs if they even tried it. And at the time, it did seem like the U.S. had enough power to just squash the whole idea.
Yeah, I mean, he basically said there was no chance the dollar would ever be replaced.
Yeah, pretty strong words.
Yeah, and it really highlights how much the situation has changed since then.
Yeah, for sure.
The U.S. response these days is a lot more muted, a lot more cautious. Officially, they're saying, oh, we won't interfere with the BRICS' internal affairs. But let's be real here. They're definitely not going to just sit back and watch the dollar lose its global dominance.
Right. They can't just sit back and do
They
nothing.
have a lot at stake here.
Yeah. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah.
So what are some of the options the U.S. has, though, besides starting a trade war? Which I think everyone agrees would be a pretty bad idea at this point. No one wants a trade war.
No.
Well, one of the things they could do is try to exert influence over international financial institutions.
Like the IMF or the World Bank?
Yeah, exactly. They could make it harder for a new BRICS currency to gain any real traction.
Oh, so like making it hard for other countries to adopt it or use it for transactions?
Exactly, yeah. And then let's not forget about sanctions. We've seen how the U.S. has used sanctions in the past as leverage.
Right.
And that has definitely made some countries hesitant to jump on board with the BRICS.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a big factor. So it really seems like we're headed towards some kind of financial showdown.
It does seem that way, yeah.
But what does all this mean for the average person listening right now? Like, what happens if the BRICS actually manage to pull this off? Well, that's the question, isn't it? We could be looking at a totally different world, one where financial power is no longer concentrated in just one place.
Right, a multipolar world.
Exactly, and the implications of that are huge.
Yeah. What would that even look like?
I mean, imagine multiple currencies vying for dominance on the global stage. It could affect everything, from the prices we pay for everyday goods to the stability of our investments.
Oh, that makes sense.
I mean, even something like traveling abroad could get more complicated, or maybe simpler.
Wow. It's hard to even imagine what that world would look like. Well, dear listener, we've thrown a lot of information at you today, but here's something to really think about. How would a multipolar financial world affect your life?
Yeah, think about your job, your savings, your future plans.
It's a question worth pondering because this story is just getting started, and we're going to continue to track it right here on Earnings Digest.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yep, see you next time.